Hi there and welcome back to a new video. So Modi ji took quite a dig at Congress and its manifesto for the Lok Sabha elections during a rally in Rajasthan.
पहले जब उनकी सरकार थी उन्होंने कहा था कि देश की संपत्ति पर पहला अधिकार मुसलमानों का है। इसका मतलब ये संपत्ति इकट्ठी करके किसको बांटेंगे? जिनके ज्यादा बच्चे हैं उनको बांटेंगे। ये कांग्रेस का मैनिफेस्टो कह रहा है कि वो माताओं बहनों का सोने का हिसाब करेंगे, उसकी जड़ती करेंगे, जानकारी लेंगे और फिर उस संपत्ति को बांट देंगे और उनको बांटेंगे जिनको मनमोहन सिंह जी की सरकार ने कहा था कि संपत्ति पर पहला अधिकार मुसलमानों का है।
The election commission took a case on it, but it was Manmohan Singh himself who said something very similar in 2006.
We will have to devise innovative plans to ensure that minorities, particularly the Muslim minority, are empowered to share equitably in the fruits of development. They must have the first claim on our resources. The Centre has admired other responsibilities whose demands will have to be fitted within the overall availability of resources.
And his full statement looks like this. Let's leave the religion out of it for the time being, but we know that the Congress manifesto promises a complete and a comprehensive caste and economic census. And according to what they find who the backward sections are, so on and so forth, they will put reforms in place. Let's hear it from Rahul Gandhi himself.
जाति जनगणना को हम पूरे देश में इंप्लीमेंट कर देंगे, देश का एक्सरे कर देंगे, दूध का दूध, पानी का पानी हो जाएगा। पिछड़े वर्ग को, दलितों को, आदिवासियों को, गरीब जनरल कास्ट के लोगों को, माइनॉरिटीज को पता लग जाएगा कि इस देश में उनकी भागीदारी कितनी है। ऐतिहासिक कदम के बाद हम क्रांतिकारी काम शुरू करेंगे। जो आपका हक बनता है वो हम आपके लिए आपको देने का काम करेंगे।
But it seems like the manifesto that Rahul Gandhi has put forward is for an India that is at least a decade or even more than a decade old. Because India was a poor and an economically backward nation, but it was more than a decade ago now. And socialism is largely responsible for our poverty and backwardness. And the Congress's role in maintaining and enforcing socialist structures in our social, political and economic spheres, which caused us to be backward and poor for all this time, cannot go unnoticed. So that is what we will look at in this video. Jawaharlal Nehru adopted democratic socialism to be the vehicle that put India through the hard times right after the independence. And democratic socialism becomes very important because socialism by itself is not democratic. The USSR at that time was run by an authoritarian autocratic rule, and so were most socialist or communist countries at the time. And democratic socialism is a set of philosophies that supports a political democracy and some form of a socially owned economy, with a particular emphasis on economic democracy, workplace democracy, worker self-management within a market socialist decentralized plan or a democratic centrally planned socialist economy. Basically, it's not as radical or bad as socialism. It has some democratic values inherent in it. Nehru aimed the upliftment of our very deprived economy through heavy industrialization, planned economic growth with heavy control from government. A closed economy where trade was quite limited, especially imports. And the idea was that if the imports were cut off, the demand would mean that Indians by ourselves would start inventing and creating new technologies and all the things that we ever wanted in the country. But that was an utter failure. India simply did not get out of its extremely deprived and economically backward situation under the democratic socialist model. I have made a video on this explaining it in great detail. So if you want to know more about it, please go and check that one out. The kind of socialism that emulated USSR or the socialist countries at that time did not work out in our country. Instead, it just plunged the nation into so much poverty. And then Nehru is succeeded by Indira Gandhi. She not only continued with her father's economic policies of growth, which never really panned out, she also revolutionized agriculture. White revolution and green revolution were put in place by Indira Gandhi's government. And it had a lot of benefits. I'm not saying it didn't. Food security was a huge issue, and white revolution and green revolution were able to curb a lot of that. But it was also a very short-term solution with a lot of long-term consequences. When we look at the economic side of it, the government took control of the production and distribution of agricultural products, and that almost completely ruined the market system, the agricultural market system that was existing in our country. Farmers and milk producers were almost completely dependent on the government from the very beginning, from getting the seeds to where they should sell their products. And even though we were able to maintain some food security because of Green Revolution, it really affected the agricultural sector and especially the farmers in the country. They were stuck in a cycle of poverty and deprivation and suicides and so on. Farm laws was a step from the Modi government to reverse this and to recreate the market system, to privatize basically agriculture sector once again, but that was almost completely stopped by the same lobbies that benefit from the government involvement in agriculture. We know how that worked out. Indira Gandhi also nationalized the major banks in India. That is, the money flow and the liquidation of cash in India was also put under government control by Indira Gandhi. I mean, it had a lot of benefits. The wars and the emergency shadowed everything during Indira Gandhi's regime, and if you really think about it, emergency could be seen as the ultimate form of communism or socialism, that is, a totalitarian government where there is no opposition. What do you think? And that once again created such a chaotic economic, political and social situation in the country. We almost lost the freedom and democracy our forefathers fought so much for. By the way, secularism is intricately woven into the socialist argument in India. And that is also a crucial point of criticism from BJP towards the Congress policies. And that is also what Modi ji was pointing out in the Rajasthan election campaign. The central point in socialism or communism is the class divisions that exist in the society or the economic structure of the society. There are two classes, the bourgeoisie and the proletariat. The bourgeoisies are the oppressors and the proletariats are the oppressed class. And globally, after a point in time, these class divisions based on economic inequalities has also been transferred to the social inequalities existing in societies. That is, feminism says that men are the oppressors and women are the oppressed by default. And when it comes to identity politics, we often hear that minorities are oppressed by default and majorities become the oppressors. So when we take that same argument in the Indian political scenario, the minorities become the oppressed by default and the majority is seen as the oppressors. And any violent acts done by the minorities are seen as an act of revolution or protest or their democratic right for dissent. And if majority does something violent or they protest against something or they do something bad, it is seen as fascism and totalitarianism and the end of democracy. Again, I'm not condoning violence here, I'm just saying how the argument looks like when secularism and socialism are equated. So that is the underlying principle in what Manmohan Singh said in 2006 and what Rahul Gandhi has been saying for a long time about the caste or the religion-based or identity-based census in the nation, because they can finally figure out who is oppressing whom and make everything equal. Now, coming to the governments after Indira Gandhi's rule, Rajiv Gandhi was the first Prime Minister to put India on a path of liberalization and privatization, but not fully. We were somewhere between socialism and privatization during Rajiv Gandhi's rule. But then the governments after Rajiv Gandhi, the Narasimha Rao government, the Vajpayee Sarkar, Manmohan Singh UPA 1 and 2 governments all took the path of liberalization and privatization. We know about the economic reforms of 1991, which was almost imposed upon us by the IMF and World Bank, and that was the direct result of the failure of socialism in India to make any difference through all these decades. And the LPG, that is liberalization, privatization and globalization model, or the steps towards economic growth, created an FDI driven, technology driven growth that eventually put us on the list of emerging countries in the world by the 2000s. But as India Today says, because, well, if you remember Rahul Gandhi's interview with Arnav Goswami, the interview in which he says empowerment 82 times, youth 58 times, women 67 times, and system 113 times. I used to wonder what he meant by system and empowerment and so on, but now it's very clear. So much economic growth and development after so many startups and entrepreneurship beginning in India, and we are looking at a very bright future. He wants to go back to wealth redistribution on caste and religious lines. How many decades back would it take us? If we look at the problems regarding caste census and wealth redistribution, the first thing is to consider how impossible it would be to do such an expansive and comprehensive caste census, especially in a country like India. Like Modi ji asks, will they measure up everything we have for creating this census? I mean, what will be the criterion for determining what is somebody's wealth? And he says that he would give away jobs or internships to youth. He would just simply put money in women's bank accounts if you are poor. For what and why? And most importantly, how? I mean, where will all this money come from? And especially for such an expansive and comprehensive census. I mean, you cannot just start it and abandon it midway because of economic conditions or scarcity of money and so on and so forth, which was what the governments used to do at one point in India. Because midway they would realize that this was a mistake, so they will just abandon, they would pack everything up and leave. We would be in misery after that. So he is just giving us a blanket promise without any clarity regarding how the census would go and how he will redistribute wealth if it ever came to that, and according to what criteria, under what time period, and what is the specific steps behind it. None of this is clear. He's just giving a promise to give people jobs and money. And of course, we cannot ignore the tragedy of socialism. People say on the right, which I agree with, we will all become equally poor under a wealth redistributed, government subsidized economy or socialism. And this is coming from a person who is still currently living in a socialist communist state in Kerala. So that's that. So I hope you liked this video and found it informative and interesting. If you did, please share it with somebody and also hit the like button and let me know in the comment section what you think about wealth redistribution and caste census, so on and so forth. And more videos are coming, so tune in, subscribe to this channel. So bye bye until next time. Bye bye. Hi guys, and here is the first book I have written, Life in a Ziploc Bag. Please check it out on Amazon or Flipkart. And it's also available for direct buying from the publisher itself. All these links are given in the description. Grab your copy now. Thank you.